RTS, Real-Time Strategy. Real-time strategy, RTS, is a genre of strategy video game in which actions take place in real time, that is, there are no turns for each player to make their decisions. All participants play simultaneously, and the game continues even while a player is thinking or executing commands. Unlike turn-based strategy games, where each player waits their turn to act, RTS games require constant adaptation to changing scenarios, as the environment is always evolving. Hello everyone, Siege of Winterfell is coming, and this is the right moment to adjust, optimize, and strengthen your formations. You have probably noticed, there are many commanders, each with different skills, specific mechanics, and distinct roles within battle. But don't worry, in this video, and in the next ones, I will explain each type of skill, what they really do inside the game's combat mechanics, and whenever possible, indicate the best formation directions for each category. So, without wasting time, let's begin. Currently, we have almost 60 commanders in Game of Thrones. Some skills look similar, others completely different. However, from a technical perspective, we can divide all of them into 5 major groups. First group, increase attack, health and defense. These commanders directly increase the base attributes of troops, attack, health, defense, depending on the commander, level, and progression stage. These bonuses can range approximately from 300% up to nearly 1,200%. What does this mean in practice? These buffs are applied to the base layer of the combat calculation. Before any special multipliers or active skills are applied, the game calculates the total troop attributes. The higher this base value, the greater the overall potential of the formation. These commanders do not create extreme damage spikes, but they strengthen the entire structure of the troop. They are consistent, stable, and effective in almost any scenario. Second group, skilled damage with damage coefficient. Here the mechanic changes. These commanders do not rely only on the troop's normal attack. Instead, they use what is called a damage coefficient. The damage coefficient is a multiplier applied to the active skill. It calculates damage based on the total attack at the moment the skill is activated. For example, for each 100 coefficient equals 1 normal attack. Some commanders do 625 of damage. This is equal to 625 normal attacks. In other words, the higher the coefficient, the higher the damage spike. This type of commander can generate damage bursts far above the troop's normal attack output. Third group, increase normal, skill and counterattack damage. Here we have commanders that increase specific damage multipliers, normal attack damage, skilled damage, counterattack damage. But what is counterattack damage? Whenever you attack an enemy troop, it automatically returns damage. This return damage is called counterattack. Many players ignore this mechanic, but in balanced battles it can represent a significant portion of total losses. The technical difference here is important. While the first group increases the base stats, this group increases the final multipliers applied to damage that has already been calculated. Fourth group, heal, remove status and special skills. Now we enter the strategic layer of combat. These commanders do not work only with raw numbers, they change the flow of the battle. Heal troops, Annie, Sansa, Soren, Marjorie, Simon, Serera. Interesting skills, Mango, Egbert, Tyrion Lannister, Julian, Russell. These commanders provide temporary buffs, conditional effects, and strategic modifiers that alter the rhythm of combat. Reduces enemy counterattacks, normal damage and render enemy troops during limited time. Sabrina, Night King, Raymond, Melisandre, Robert, Hector, Cersei. These skills apply stun, silence, debuffs, or remove control effects from allies. The continuation for this group will focus on how utility and control commanders create tempo advantage by reducing enemy efficiency, interrupting skill cycles, and enabling safer damage trades, as well as how to structure formations that win through disruption, denial, and sustained pressure rather than raw offensive output. Fifth group, short duration burst damage. Finally, we have commanders specialized in dealing massive damage in a very short time. They function by creating a damage window, where the formation reaches its maximum offensive multiplier peak. Examples: Layla, Jaime, Daenerys, Jon Snow, Cerera, Dina, Daeron, Vorian, Cersei. These commanders are decisive when the battle is resolved quickly. If the burst window is not neutralized with control or sustain, the fight can end before it even stabilizes. Now that we've covered all 5 groups, it's time to analyze them individually. We begin with the first group, the one focused on adding attack, health, and defense. We divided this group into 4 priority tiers: first, attack; second, health; third, defense. Best commanders, those who increase troop attack. The most valuable raw stat in this category: Jaime, Drake, Layla, Enzo, Cerera, Lax, Patello, Rhea, Salma, Thien, Dina, Cinera, Lario, Sinel, Uma, Missandei, Grey Worm, Cass Sana, Mingo, Obion, Winton, Vorian. These commanders directly increase offensive output and improve trade efficiency in every rotation. Useful commanders, those who increase health or reduce enemy attack: Lena, Andrea, Miranda. They provide survivability and soft mitigation, making them situationally strong depending on the matchup. Not commanders, those who only add health: Meryl, Arslan, Kravas, FaZe. While health is valuable, it lacks the direct impact of attack scaling and does not improve damage trades as efficiently. Absolutely no. Commanders who only add defense: Gurel, Chris, Rob, Sheila. Defense is the least impactful stat in high-level PvP scaling, offering minimal return compared to attack or even health. And despite the large number of commanders available, we must remember, we can only use 9 commanders total. That means every slot must justify itself. You are not building one formation, you are building 3, and each choice directly affects your overall strategic structure. That concludes the continuation of the first group. Now we move to the second group, the skill coefficient damage commanders. Here, we will break down how coefficient damage actually scales, how to properly synchronize multiple skill damage commanders, and how to structure formations that maximize their activation cycles. We will analyze how base coefficient interacts with Master Tower research, how multipliers amplify final output, and why timing between skill rotations is more important than raw stats. So in this continuation, we focus on optimization, synchronization, and offensive structure, turning coefficient damage into controlled, repeatable battlefield dominance. The only way to increase skill damage output comes from 2 main sources. The first one is through research in the Master Towers, which provides up to a total of 20% additional skill damage. This is a fixed and reliable multiplier, and it directly increases the effectiveness of all skill-based commanders in your formation. The second method is through commanders that increase skill damage directly, specifically from the third group, Jean and Sinel. Only these 2 act as true skill damage multipliers. With this in mind, I separated skill-related commanders into 3 categories: skill damage commanders, those who use damaging skills with a defined damage coefficient and serve as the main offensive source; skill damage multipliers, commanders who directly increase the skill damage multiplier itself; skill things, commanders who modify how skills behave in battle, such as increasing the number of activations in PvP. Depending on the fight, a skill may trigger once, twice, or even 3 times. By combining this data, I structured what I call the Supreme Table, a step-by-step visualization of how multipliers stack. We begin with the base damage coefficient, which varies for each commander and has no multipliers applied. Next, we add the Master Tower research, which provides 20% over the base coefficient. After that, the multiplier from commanders like Sinel or Jean is applied on top of the already increased value. Sinel provides a 180% increase, while Jean provides 60%. For example, Daenerys has a base coefficient of 1200. With Master Tower research, 20%, that becomes 1440. Applying Sinel's 180% multiplier results in a total of 4032 coefficient damage, equivalent to 40.32 normal attacks instantly. If we use Jean instead, the total becomes 2304 coefficient damage. equivalent to 23.04 normal attacks in a single moment. Now imagine that applied inside a synchronized skill cycle. This is why understanding multipliers is essential. And when you add skill things commanders, such as Layla or Cassandra, you introduce another layer of scaling. These commanders can allow the skill to activate one additional time when triggered. In Daenerys' case, that means the entire calculated damage is applied twice. If we were already reaching 40.32 normal attacks worth of damage with Sanel's multiplier, triggering the skill one extra time pushes it to 80.64 normal attacks instantly. That is duplication of an already amplified value. In practical terms, this can be close to deleting an entire march in a single rotation, especially if the enemy has no sustain or control to interrupt the cycle. This is why synchronization between skill damage commanders, skill damage multipliers, and skill things commanders creates exponential pressure. You are not stacking damage linearly. You are multiplying, and then repeating the multiplication. Before continuing, I need to clarify and correct something important. Earlier, I mentioned only 2 commanders increased skill damage. That was incomplete. In this spreadsheet, I organized commanders based on how they modify multipliers, either increasing your damage output or reducing the enemy's damage efficiency. These percentages represent multiplicative bonuses applied to the final damage calculation, not flat increases to base stats. Let's break this down properly. Increases skill damage. These percentages increase the final skill damage coefficient, after base coefficient and research are applied. Sanel with 180% skill damage, Jean with 60% skill damage, Cersei with 50% skill damage, Russell with 30% skill damage. Increases normal attack damage. These affect the multiplier applied to your troops' basic attacks. Haley, 60% normal attack damage, Daeron, 180% normal attack damage, Cersei, 50% normal attack damage, Petri, 180% normal attack damage, Rhea, 90% normal attack damage, Varys, 30% normal attack damage, Jaqen, 25% per stack. Up to 125%. Here, the percentage increases the damage dealt by each normal attack instance. In Jaqen's case, the effect stacks over time, meaning his multiplier grows progressively during the fight. Increases counterattack damage. These modify the damage dealt when your troops counterattack after being hit. Cersei, 50% counterattack reduction, Barrett, 40% counterattack reduction, Jon, 80% counterattack reduction. Counterattack multipliers are especially strong in sustained fights, because they activate every 10 seconds whenever your troops are attacked. Reductions in skill, normal, and counterattack damage. These percentages reduce the enemy's final damage output in the specified category. Jon, 50% normal attack reduction, Jaqen, 60% normal attack reduction, Dina, 70% counterattack reduction, Kevin, 80% normal attack reduction, Robert, 15% reduction to normal, skill, and counterattack damage. Melisandre, 40% reduction to normal, skill, and counterattack damage, Hector, 80% counterattack reduction. These reductions apply multiplicatively against the enemy's output. For example, if the enemy's normal attack would deal 1000 damage and you apply a 50% reduction, it becomes 500. Battles are decided not by who has more base stats, but by who controls the multiplier structure more efficiently. Remember this very carefully, because it will be essential when we start building the formations. Now we reach the penultimate group, commanders with interesting skills, healing, and status control effects. We divide them into 3 categories. First, heal commanders, Annie. Healing coefficient of 1300, Sansa. Healing coefficient of 430, Cerrera. Healing coefficient of 450, Soren. Healing coefficient of 650, Marjorie. These coefficients represent the healing scaling applied when the skill activates. Just like damage coefficients, healing coefficients determine how much sustain is restored during battle. The higher the coefficient, the stronger the recovery per activation. Next, Enemy control status: Night King, Simon, Cersei, and Sabrina share a similar control mechanic. They render enemy troops in a circular area incapable of performing normal attacks, skilled damage, or counterattacks for a short duration. The difference between them is the duration, which varies between 3 and 6 seconds. Raymond applies a more specific control. He prevents target troops from dealing army skilled damage for 3 seconds. These effects are extremely valuable because they interrupt activation cycles and create safe windows for your own damage rotations. Finally, interesting skills: Egbert reduces rage speed by 60%, Tyrion prevents wounded troops from healing for 5 seconds, Mengo increases march speed by 30%, Julian increases normal damage taken by 40% for 5 seconds, Sandor increases normal, skill, and counterattack damage taken by 50% for 5 seconds. These commanders do not necessarily deal high raw damage, but they manipulate tempo, deny sustain, accelerate pressure, or amplify vulnerability. Perfect. Now we enter the 5th group. And here things start to get really dangerous. This is the group of commanders with advanced, high-impact abilities, those who scale damage absurdly, whether by increasing troop damage by gigantic percentages, creating stacking effects, multiplying attacks, or applying area damage. So let's organize by troop type. Infantry group: Vorian, 20% chance to apply bleed. With a 360 damage coefficient for 3 seconds, he adds sustained pressure and consistent damage over time. Daeron, each time troops block, infantry attack increases by 400% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. He scales through defense. The longer he blocks, the stronger he becomes. Ca Valari group: Cassana reduces skill cooldown by 1 second and has a 40% chance to reuse the skill. She accelerates the entire formation skill cycle. She is a damage engine. Layla, 35% chance to reuse the skill after activation. Pure burst recursion, but without cooldown reduction like Cassana. Spearman group: Grey Worm, 30% chance to deal extra damage, 500 coefficient on normal attacks. Consistent hybrid pressure. Jamie, 30% chance to deal 200% critical damage on normal attacks. High burst potential. Dina, each critical hit increases spearman attack by 1500% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. She scales massively with crit-based builds. Serera, 60% chance to deal 150% critical damage. Very consistent critical damage output. Bowman group: Missandei, 50% basic attack damage and 30% chance to launch an additional attack. Increases both frequency and strength of normal attacks. Cosimo, 25% chance to apply corrosion. Each stack increases damage taken by 20%, up to 3 stacks. He amplifies total team damage. Total attack commanders: Peter, 40% chance to attack again. Increases attack frequency and total output. Daenerys, AoE damage, 1200 coefficient, up to 5 targets, and restores 200 rage. Damage plus skill cycling. Ermendon, 30% chance to hit up to 3 nearby targets, 300 coefficient, turns single target damage into spread pressure. This group is about scaling, recursion, and amplification. They are not support commanders. They are offensive cores. And now that you understand how each one works individually, how they scale, how they multiply damage, and how they accelerate combat, the real question becomes, which ones perform better in Siege of Winterfell, which commanders should be primary, and which are stronger as secondary? That is exactly what we are going to break down in the next video. So if you want to know which of these advanced damage commanders truly dominate the Siege meta, stay tuned, because that is coming next.